Hey there, and welcome to a brand new episode of Delivering Marketing Joy. I am your host, Kirby Hasseman, and joining me today is a brand new rock star. I'm so excited to have him on here. He's the founder of Renegade and CMO Huddles, a highly engaged community of business-to-business CMOs. His second book, Renegade Marketing, just came out in October, 12 Steps to Building Unbeatable B2B Brands. And in February 22, this is very impressive, LinkedIn named Drew one of the top 15 voices in marketing and advertising. Drew Neisser, thank you so much for joining me.
Kirby, thank you so much. And thank you so much for all the work you do to get, good stories out there.
Oh man, thank you so much. I mean, that means a lot to me. So I want to dive into this CMO Huddles. This is fascinating to me. I think this is a really cool idea. Sharing best practices can be so powerful. I think especially when you're in a unique role like Chief Marketing Officer, which the reality is it's still new in the history of business. So can you talk about CMO Huddles, about the group, and why you think it's important?
Oh gosh, yeah. So I love this story, and it goes back to the way crises management and the way I sort of approach crises. It's like, and this happened in 2008, and it happened again when the pandemic began. I had no idea how our business, Renegade, the agency, would do. But I did know that the solution is always reach out to everybody you know and see what you could do for them. Don't even worry about your problems, just try to help. So we, on April 1st, 2020, started about 10 of us, 10 CMOs and myself, and I moderated these conversations. Well, over the next 6 months, we met 55 times.
Wow.
And during the course of the time, they said, Drew, this is a great idea. Drew, there's a business here. Drew, here's how you should structure the business. And basically what ended up being probably about 25, 30 CMOs who participated over the course of the summer, write the business plan for CMO Huddles. And it was all about the fact if you talk to most CMOs, they'll say, there's nobody like me in my organization that I can go to for advice. Can you get me with like-minded peers? And that's really an important part of this is if you're curious, don't visit cmohuddles.com.
Right.
Know everything. There's other places for you to share your wisdom. But at CMO Huddles, it's all about sharing experiences. And now we're close to 100. Plus, we support a transition team of CMOs who are in between. And I just am so lucky to be at the center of this. And then I'm going to say one last thing. Sure. It's not luck if you've interviewed 450 CMOs. And that's the part of this that I also want to suggest. When you start on a journey, you don't always know where you're going to end up. And this happened to me. I've been interviewing CMOs for 10 years and Huddles sort of fell in my lap, but it was only possible because I'd done all this work. I put my 10,000 hours in.
Wow, that makes a ton of sense. And it is funny. I love that you had sort of the customer base write your business model and your business plan for you. That's kind of genius. I like that. That's really good. So, but I want to jump into, you recently wrote a book called Renegade Marketing, and it touts the 12 steps for building a great brand. I talked about that in the intro. So just between us, right? I mean, obviously we want people to check out the book, but can you give us a few tips to start down the path of doing this right, building that brand for B2B?
Sure. And one of the things that the whole purpose of the book is to radically simplify B2B marketing, because we did some research 4 years ago, and then again 3 years ago, and then again 2 years ago on whether or not B2B marketing had gotten more complicated. In fact, 90% said yes, and less than 30% said it gotten more effective. So we said, okay, that's a problem. What can we do? And so there's a framework in the book. It's the CATS framework. It's courageous, artful, thoughtful, and scientific, which spells CATS. And the place it all starts and it fails is with strategy. And so in part one of Courageous Strategy, I sort of lay out 3 things that I think will really be helpful to your audience. One, clear away the clutter. And I actually, in the book, it has a clear away the clutter pledge, which is like 5 things. I'm happy to share that with you, but that's part one. Oh, you want me to share that?
Sure,
pledge?
Absolutely.
Sure.
Yeah.
Okay. So I will focus relentlessly on a handful of strategic priorities. I will have the courage to say no to distractions. I will delegate everything except the things only I can do that move the organization forward. I won't add to my to-do list without taking something off of it. I will block off 30 minutes a day for thinking big. And that's chapter 1, just to set the framework.
Wow, it's funny in hearing all that. Like, there's a lot of, obviously that makes sense from a marketing perspective, but I think from any, whether C-level or, when you start talking about, if I'm going to put something else on here, I'm going to take it off, man, many of us struggle with that idea because we don't want to say no. So I think that makes a ton of sense. So in that vein, right, you've given us a couple things to look at, and I think that makes sense. But what are some mistakes? What are some mistakes that you see B2B brands making when it comes to building brands?
Yeah, and this is, if we say the B2B marketing has gotten more complicated, what the result is that this death by 1,000 paper cuts, that marketers have broken their budget into thousands and thousands of micro messages. And so we call that the peanut butter effect, trying to do too much against too many people with too many different messages. So obviously the solution is tightening it up, fewer messages, better content. Number two would be tactics, not strategy. When your CEO says, "Hey, we should be on TikTok," you have a problem, because your CEO should not be telling you tactical things. You should be focused on the strategic value that marketing is bringing to the business. And then the sort of third biggest mistake that I say, and I write about it in the book, and I sort of flip everything on its head. It is called Renegade Marketing after all. Which is that most marketers start with the wrong audience. Let's say they decide to rebrand and they have a very exciting story they want to share with the marketplace, and they rush it out to the market and they go right to prospects. And it's the opposite of what you need to do, which is get employees involved and trained and certified on this new story and make it real. You've got to get your customers involved in believing it. And then you have permission from those customers and employees to go to market. So switch your audience, reverse your funnel.
I love that. It was funny. And the reason I love it, I think, Drew, is I was literally talking about something like this today with a customer we're working with, and we're trying to guide them. And, it's the whole idea of nothing kills a bad business like good marketing, right? It's like, if we can send people to you, but if you're not ready to accept them and answer the phone properly and do this and do this and do this, like you said, get the employee buy-in, well, then this is all a moot point. And so I love that point. That is super, super good. Okay. Final question. I know we're going through it quick, so I appreciate your willingness to do that. But I always am fascinated by people like you who've written multiple books, who are connector like you are with CMOs. Who is someone or some organization that inspires you to continue to sort of up your game? That, obviously when you're top 15 on LinkedIn in marketing and advertising, you might just say, okay, I'm good. Right. But who continues to inspire you?
Well, this answer is going to surprise you a little bit, I hope, which is that my inspiration comes from Benjamin Franklin.
Okay.
And I consider him the America's first chief marketing officer. He is courageous, artful, thoughtful, and scientific to the nth degree. And the marketing challenge that he faced was selling a revolution to a king. And if he isn't successful at that, we don't get the money to finance the revolution, the weapons to arm the revolution, and the expertise that came ultimately with both the French Navy and the French generals. So we don't win the war without the French. And so it's the most incredible marketing job. But he's overall inspiring as this polymath who, to his end, he died with the largest library in America in 1790. But he had accomplished so much. So someone who has this kind of ingenuity and curiosity, to me, is just endlessly fascinating and inspiring.
Wow. Yeah, totally. And you did surprise me with that answer. And that's but in a super good way. That's really, really interesting. Well, Drew, thank you so much for taking the time. Where can people find Renegade Marketing? Let's start there.
Well, the book you can find on Amazon, hardcover, paperback, audio version, and the ebook. And you can find me on renegade.com or on LinkedIn, thanks to the folks at LinkedIn who have sort of anointed me.
Yeah, well, that's pretty cool for you. That's really awesome. So thank you so much. This has been really fun. Let's do it again sometime. Okay.
I love it. Thank you for all you're doing with this great content.
Thank you so much, Drew. Drew Neisser. Hey, this is going to wrap up this edition of Delivering Marketing Joy. We'll see you next time.